it's Tanya. Today I just wanted to talk about what it's like to be adopted and how it feels for me. I just wanted to share my experiences with being adopted and what it's been like for me. And I've shared things kind of like this with people, but I've never really gotten in depth. I feel like it's always kind of surface level. And I feel like that's because it's really hard to explain or even recognize for myself how I'm actually feeling about it or how to explain what I am feeling. It's more of an internal battle that I think a lot of adopted people probably struggle with, which there are a lot of people who are adopted, and I'm not here to speak for everybody. Everybody's experience is different, and I don't want to say that my experience is all encompassing because it's not. Everybody, like I said, is different. Today I'm talking about my experiences, so let's dive in. A little background. I call my adopted family my family, and my biological family my bio family. So when I'm explaining things today, don't get confused. That's kind of how I'm gonna go about it. To me, adoption's always been pretty normal. My family always let me know about my adoption, and I'm gonna put some photos here so you can kind of see what it's like for me or my day of adoption. But this is kind of my adoption day and what it looked like for me. I'll leave them up for a second so you can see them. Please enjoy. Anyways, I've been used to it my whole life, and I've been told from an early age, so there's never really been a time that I didn't know that I was adopted. It's always a conversation my family's had, and they've been really open and honest about kind of where I came from. And obviously they don't know all the facts, but it's nice that they were willing to do that for me. They always put everything in a positive light. For example, they would say things like, even though they had a really hard time, they loved you enough to let you come and live with us. Things like that. So I didn't really view them as, the bad guys. They were just giving me a different opportunity in life. My parents also gave me opportunities to meet my bio family if I wanted to. So they would offer to come with me if I wanted to meet them, or have like a third party facilitator kind of like watch and do a supervised type of visit, so then I could meet with them without them there if I wanted to. So let's talk a little bit about why I was adopted. And I'm not going to go into too much detail today. Maybe that can be for another time. That's not exactly what I want today to be about. I want it to be more about the feelings behind the adoption. But my story started, I was born into a family that had a lot of addictions. My bio mom just had trouble controlling those addictions, and I was actually born cocaine positive. That kind of led her to leaving me with different people, and so I was taken care of by others rather than her, and she would show up occasionally and take me, and then the other people would have to try to find me. Eventually that put me on the police and child welfare kind of radar, and so eventually I was taken into foster care. My bio mom showed up for some of the visits, but eventually the addictions won, so she stopped coming, and then eventually I was able to be adopted by my current family now. So that's a little bit of a summary of what kind of happened to me. Now I want to talk about my feelings behind adoption and how adoption has made me feel. And so, to be candid, I usually have about a meltdown twice a year or so in regards to adoption feelings. It's just an overwhelming sadness, and it leads to just thoughts and questions that replay in my mind, like, why didn't they want me in their life? Why were their addictions more important than me? Did they think I was a burden? Was I physically flawed because of the cocaine? Did I disgust them because of some of the physical things? Was there something wrong with me? Did they regret having me? Those kinds of things. And those aren't really fun thoughts to have, which leads to, an overwhelming feeling of rejection. Like nobody wants me around, and the one family got rid of me, so maybe the next one will. In these moments, logic just doesn't really work for me. So I can tell myself all day that I have all these support systems. I have my adoptive family, I have a spouse, I have family, friends, you name it. But in those moments, I can't wrap that up in my brain. I can't connect that. I still have that feeling that I'm just not good enough. And that's pretty isolating. I feel like it boils down to, in my situation, I was abandoned. I feel that a family discarded me. They didn't want me around. And again, no amount of logic can get that through in my brain that that's not really true. They just were unable at that time. For me, I feel like I have a lot of feelings of grief. Like, it's a family that I will never have the opportunity to be a part of. And it's a loss that you can't quite explain. It's like a feeling in your gut or the pit of your stomach that just doesn't go away. And even though you know you're in a better situation, you can't 100% feel that way because that was still your family. And it's something that you won't have again. Or if you do, rekindle the relationship, it's not going to be what it could have been. So obviously anger and hurt and devastation, and I mean, that's a really strong word, but it's, somebody chose to give me up, and maybe it was for good reasons, or maybe they cared more about a drug than me, and they idolized that over their own child, which is sad. There's also confusion, which goes kind of back to what I talked about earlier. What were the reasons surrounding me having to go away? I feel like sometimes I just have an overwhelming feeling of justice in these moments. So like once it's kind of wrapping up, like, you know what? I deserve answers. That's the least they could give me if they didn't want to be in my life, is some answers. And in reality, I'm choosing to not have contact with them right now. So that's not fair to put on them. But again, logic doesn't quite work in those moments of the meltdowns. From some adopted people that I've talked about, it leads to some identity issues and insecurities about themselves, like, who am I now and who would I have been? Or if I grew up in a different family group, would I still be the same person I am today? Would I be a different person completely if I was in a different scenario? I feel like the next thing that kind of comes up in my world is like a feeling of guilt. And let me explain that a little bit. This sounds funny because why would I feel guilty for being adopted? And that's not exactly what I mean by this. I mean a couple different things. So the first one being, I feel guilty for wanting to reach out to a bio family. Even though my family has said repeatedly that they would go with me to, reach out to my bio family, or, have somebody as a third party sit with me. And I think it feels guilty because why wouldn't I be thankful for the family that I've been given, or like that's taken care of me for all these years? Even though they've told me that they would love me to have that opportunity and they support it, it's still that feeling that I'm not being grateful for what they've given me or for what I've been given in life. It's like trying to find a balance between being thankful for the opportunities and the family that you've been given, but also the curiosity of what could have been. And I hear the saying, like, you're so lucky to be adopted by such a great family all the time. And I mean, that kind of leads to it too. Like, it's true. I have better resources. I have better opportunities. I've been given better health care. I don't know, things like that. And it's true and it's beautiful, but it's also bittersweet because it's more family I could have had in my life. And in some situations for adopted people, adoption I guess the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And I've had great opportunities, but some people don't get that. But sometimes I feel pressure to have to be perfect because I have to be perfect to keep this family around and all these people around me because other people have left, so why won't they? Or when in reality, yeah, maybe that will happen, but we're human beings, we all have flaws, we're all imperfect, and people come and go in our lives anyway, so what's the hurt in not being perfect? Again, these are just my personal feelings. I can't speak for all adopted people, but maybe if you are adopted, you can kind of relate to some of these, but they're not necessarily a fact for every single adopted person. Next, I kind of wanted to talk about how I forgave my bio family, because you have all this hurt and this anger that they're not around and they're not supporting you and they're not there when they're supposed to be. But how do you forgive them in that? It's really hurt that somebody who was supposed to love for me and care for me and support me and always be there just didn't, and they're not around. A drug became something that was idolized over your own daughter or your own blood. What I'm going to talk about next is a little bit more of a sensitive topic, and I'm talking about abortion. So if that's something that you feel uncomfortable about, skip to this timestamp that I'm going to put here. That way you can kind of skip over it. But it is a part of my story, and I did want to include it today. So feel free to continue watching, but also don't feel pressured to keep watching. So in college, I had this project. It was a work project. I don't remember the exact project title or what I was actually researching, but somehow I came across abortion. And sadly, I saw a picture of a child that had been aborted in the last trimester. And it was gory and it was awful to see, to be honest. And it really rocked my world. I had never really thought about that could have been me. At that point, I realized that my parents did something for me that I had never really realized. They paid me a respect that I had never really thought of, and they gave me a chance at life. And they didn't choose abortion for me. Now, in saying this, I don't want you to think that I'm passing judgment on you or trying to make you feel shame if you've had an abortion. I feel like lots of people have had abortions, and it's 100% not my call, not my place. Lots of people have different life circumstances, and I want you to know that you still have value, you still have worth. I don't think of you any differently if you've had an abortion, and I don't think of you in a negative light at all. I haven't lost any respect for you. I personally love you, whoever you are, and I'm coming from a place of being thankful that it didn't happen to me, but this is just, again, how my forgiveness journey started, and I just had a new realization. I had never had that before. It was like I was given this opportunity to live, and I felt like it was one thing that my bio mom did give to me. She didn't provide me anything else, but she did provide me the opportunity to live. And I found value in my bio mom, which I had never found before. And I really feel like I didn't think I had any value in my mom's eyes, but in reality, she had to have thought so, even in her drug mind. She thought that I was worthy enough to be born into the world. And yeah, maybe that means I was with another family, but I just felt blessed that I was given something by my bio mom. And And like maybe other bio moms have given other things, and I don't think that's the realization for every adopted person. That's just kind of how mine started. Also, therapy helps, so I recommend that. So, my tips for today. I wanted to talk about what questions are okay to ask an adopted person, or what things are not okay to say, because I feel like that's a learned skill that they don't really teach in school. So how are you going to learn it unless you're kind of taught that? I truly try not to get offended by anybody that's asking questions, because I generally feel like people are coming at it with good intentions. Like they are just curious and they care about me and they're trying to learn about me, and I think that's great. I think that sometimes we just don't know what questions are okay to ask and what are not okay to ask. So first, let's talk about what not to ask. And I feel like generally it all starts with your tone, because a tone can change a question from a positive to a negative really easily. So just be cautious with your tone that you're using. So one question is, do you hate your bio family? That's just kind of an awkward question to ask, because how do you expect me to respond? And it's me kind of awkwardly trying to change the subject and avoid the question. The next question is, do you think you're lucky that somebody wanted you and you're lucky to be adopted? That one, again, I feel like it changes with tone, but it's also just maybe not the most eloquent way to ask that. Why did they give you up? Why didn't they want you? What was wrong with you? Now, let's talk about good questions to ask. I would say that being interested is good, and it shows that you really care about the person. So hopefully a lot of adopted people take it the way that I do. But maybe like, do you want to know your biological family? Or do you know what your biological family is like? Have you met them? Do you want to meet them in the future? What do you know about your bio family? Has being adopted been a good experience for you? I think as long as you're asking in a good tone, you're probably okay. I think as long as you're asking genuine questions and you think things through before you say them, you're probably on the right track. I just want to remind you that being adopted is not easily understandable. Meaning, I'm adopted and I'm still trying to figure things out. And I think that's true for a lot of people. And for instance, I'm adopted, but I can't understand somebody else who's adopted, their experience, because we can never truly understand somebody's life circumstance unless you lived it, and you're still probably processing it. A lot of times it's an internal battle that you're trying to figure out, and we just can't put people into boxes. It's okay to not understand. It's okay to ask questions. I'm also interested to know, if you're adopted, what other questions do you think are appropriate for people to ask, or what are your feelings that maybe I didn't discuss today? Because I just think it's really interesting, and it's good to know where other people are coming from. Well, that's all I have for you today. So I hope that you have a wonderful day. Don't talk to strangers unless they give you candy. And I'll see you next time. Bye!